Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. This is the 12th episode of the summary of the Quran, and tonight we are going to do two surahs, Surah Yusuf and Surah Ra'd, the 12th and the 13th surahs respectively of the Quran, and the third and the fourth surahs respectively of the third group of Quranic surahs. We started the third group last night. I mentioned the fact that this third group has 15 surahs in all, 14 of which are Meccan, and they are all in pairs. So there are 7 pairs, and there's only one solitary Surah An-Nur, which is a Madinan surah, which does not pair up with any other surah. The basic themes that we find in this group are the good news, basharat given to the believers, and a warning handed out to the disbelievers who were bent upon rejecting the Almighty's message, despite the fact that they could see that it was correct, it was from God. The manner this has been done in this pair is that in Surah Yusuf we find the same theme being put across through the narration of the story of Joseph Yusuf alayhi salam. And the next surah, its partner Surah Ra'd, is talking about the same theme by a reference to the phenomena of the nature. So let's take Surah Yusuf first. The surah begins with the same initial letters, disjointed letters, Alif, Lam, Ra, as we had seen in the last 2 surahs. It says, Tilka ayatul kitabil mubin. These are verses of the book that presents its message most clearly. That is, the way the Almighty has explained the realities that are expressed through the Quran, they're explained very clearly. It's only that we need to understand the language and we need to be attentive to be able to benefit from them. The second verse says, Inna anzalnahu Quranan Arabiyya. We have sent to you, O Messenger, an Arabic Quran. That's what we have revealed, and that's what we have delivered to you. La'allakum taqilun. We have made it an Arabic Quran so that you may understand. That is, you, the people of the Arabian Peninsula, you should understand it directly, and then you deliver it to the rest of the people. Then we move on to the next verse, third, which says, we are narrating to you a beautiful story. Nahnu naqussu alayka ahsan al-qasas. Through the revelation we are revealing in this Quran. Bima uhayna ilayka al-Quran. And you, O Prophet, were most certainly unaware of this story before it was revealed. It's a beautiful story because it's a story which is complete as far as the needs, requirements of an interesting, absorbing story are concerned, and yet what it mentions has lots and lots of lessons, moral, spiritual lessons to be learned from. Yusuf, we are told in verse 15, well, the background of this verse is that Yusuf is his father Yaqub, Jacob's favorite son. There are 12 sons. He and his younger brother Benjamin are from one mother, and the others are from other mothers. But because of his good qualities, because of his righteous, virtuous behavior, Yusuf he catches the eye. He is the favorite of his father, and as a result of this, the rest of the brothers, the 10 brothers, they are jealous of him, and they devise a plan to deceive their father and get rid of Yusuf. They plan to throw him into a well, and as a result, he will be out of their sight, and they will have their proper, what they thought well deserved status given to them. So the Quran tells us, فَلَمَّا ذَهَبُوا بِهِ وَأَجْمَعُوا أَن يَجْعَلُوهُ فِي غَيَابَةِ الْجُبِّ. So they persisted with their demand to take Yusuf along, and his father gave in. And they took him along and threw him into the bottom of a well. وَأَوْحَيْنَا إِلَيْهِ. And we gave him this message, inspired this message to him. لَتُنَبِّئَنَّهُمْ بِأَمْرِهِمْ هَذَا. That there will come a day when you will inform them about this act of theirs. وَهُمْ لَا يَشْعُرُونَ. And they would not even imagine it. They will not be able to realize it. What we learn from this particular part of the story is that even though the young Joseph was thrown into the pit of a well, deep into it, and therefore, if you imagine it, he was vulnerable, he was in a miserable situation, like many people are when they go through sufferings. But that's what we know from outside. What exactly is the Almighty doing to them to make them feel comfortable is what we don't know. But we know for sure that in the case of Yusuf, while he was being thrown into the well, God gave him this confidence, a feeling of satisfaction, contentment. Don't worry about it, I'll take care. And the future is going to be far better for you. And you will let them know about the fact that you know what they did to you. And then when you will inform them about it, they'll not be able to even imagine that you are the same Yusuf whom they had thrown into the well. Now what we gather later on is that from in verse 21, the Almighty says that the person who ultimately bought Yusuf from the market of Egypt, so there was a great caravan that came, and they were able to take out Yusuf from the well, and he was ultimately sold in the market. The person who bought him, he said to his wife, make him feel comfortable. He can be of benefit to us, he can serve us, or you never know, we might make him our son. We might adopt him as a son. Thus, the Almighty says, we enabled him to get space in that land so that we could pick him for our purposes. So, starting from a situation where he was almost gone, Yusuf is brought out, sold in the market, and in the process, he goes to an important official of the system of the Egyptian society, and he is sympathetically inclined towards Yusuf, and the Almighty says that that was the starting point of Yusuf getting the opportunity of establishing himself in the land of Egypt, so that the Almighty could choose him, pick him for his purposes. And God says the reality is that God has full control to implement his decisions. Wallahu ghalibun ala amrihi walakinna aktharan nasi la ya'lamun. But most people don't know about it. God does it. He has full control over everything, but we don't realize it. So this one part of the story itself is a good indication that God has his own ways of doing things, and he does it in a way that most of us don't even realize it. Then we move on to verse 24, where we are informed that it so happened that instead of treating Yusuf as her son, this lady, she attempted to entice Yusuf to do haram act with her, to do something wrong with her. And the Quran says, وَلَقَدْ حَمَّتْ بِهِ وَهَمَّ بِهَا. And one day she attempted to seduce him. وَهَمَّ بِهَا لَوْلَا أَرَّى بُرْهَانَ رَبِّي. And he would have been inclined towards her as well, had he not seen a sign of his Lord. It happened that way so that we could keep him away from all evil and obscenity. Indeed, he was amongst our chosen people. So what the Almighty is telling us is that there was a particularly difficult situation, a situation where Yusuf could have landed into an embarrassing situation, into trouble. But the Almighty took him out of it. And although the lady attempted to seduce him, he stayed away. And this happened because the Almighty enabled him to see something that caused him to control himself. And this is what the Almighty does. And the message is that if we keep ourselves clean, chaste, noble, pious, under normal circumstances, the Almighty would come to our rescue in difficult circumstances and would enable us to stay away from doing wrong things and landing ourselves into embarrassing situations. And this is God's policy regarding all humans. So the message is that be as good as you can under all circumstances. Don't take any act of piety, moral uprightness lightly, because these are the things which when we do, the Almighty makes it a point that He would not allow us to do things blatantly wrong, even when they are attempting to invite us very strongly towards them. So that's what happened to Yusuf. Then we move on and the story proceeds, and we learn that this lady, who was obviously a wife of an important official of the Egyptian system, she could not do what she wanted to do, what she attempted against Yusuf. But she was still determined because she was not punished by the system. It was a weak system, and because Yusuf was only a, call him servant, the lady, because of her influence, was not punished, and it was as if business was going on as normal. In the meanwhile, it so happened that ladies in that society started talking to each other, gossiping about this incident. And many of them thought that it was very strange that a lady would fall into love with a servant of hers. And what is even more strange is the fact that if she had decided, she could not do what she wanted to do. So when this lady came to learn about this gossiping that was going around, she invited them to a party, and she arranged for the ladies to have knives in their hands, and she asked Yusuf to appear before them. And when they saw this young man, they were amazed at his beauty, the way he was, the piety that was written large on his face, and the fact that despite the fact that these ladies too, because of the way they were impressed by him, they also wanted to entice him, but he stayed away. And in the process, they cut their fingers as well. But Yusuf did not oblige. But Yusuf knew that if the situation would continue like this, he might find some occasion when he would be inclined to slip and be involved in something which he would never ever even imagine of doing. So what he does is that the Quran tells us in verses 33 and 34 that he prayed to God. قَالَ رَبِّ السِّجْنُ وَحَبُّ إِلَيَّ مِمَّا يَدْعُونَنِي إِلَيْهِ. O my Lord, prison is more acceptable to me compared to what they are inviting me towards. That is, please take me out of this place. I don't want to stay in this situation, environment anymore, because if you are not going to take me away, I will be inclined towards them and become amongst those who are overwhelmed by emotions and are and other people who are ignorant. So, and he prayed, and if you will not avert from me their plan, I might get inclined towards them and be among those who are overwhelmed by emotions. The message is that no matter how good you are, you should not challenge the evil to come to you. You should do well. You would do well to stay away from evil. Don't come close to it, because we humans are weak and vulnerable. If we are not going to take proper preventive measures, there is every likelihood that we will falter and slip. So as great a man as Prophet Yusuf, he asked the Almighty to take him away from the evil environment of those ladies who were trying to force him to do evil. And the Almighty obliged, he accepted his prayer, and the end result was that he found himself behind bars for no fault of his. Then we are introduced to a new scenario, a new situation. Yusuf is in the prison like many other fellow prisoners, and there were two inmates who came to Joseph, and asked him to interpret their respective dreams that they were experiencing, watching over a few nights. So Yusuf said to them, when they asked him to interpret those dreams, قَالَ لَا يَأْتِيكُمَا طَعَامٌ تُرْزَقَانِهِ. You will not get the food that you get every day, إِلَّا نَبَّأْتُكُمَا بِتَأْوِيلِهِ, except that by then I will have informed you about the respective interpretations of your dreams. So don't worry, I'm going to do it. قَبْلَ أَنْ يَأْتِيَكُمَا, before that food comes to both of you. ذَلِكُمَا مِمَّا عَلَّمَنِي رَبِّي, this interpretation of the dreams I'm going to do because of what God has taught me. But then he goes on and starts preaching to them the message of God. So once they were made to feel comfortable that their demand of getting the interpretation of their dreams is going to be met, Yusuf then started telling them the true message of God. There are two lessons to be drawn. There are 2 points that are worthy of our attention. A, Joseph was very keen to let people know what the truth was. So when he got the opportunity of communicating with these 2 inmates of prison, he didn't miss the opportunity and went for and delivered passionately the message of God. But the second lesson to be drawn is that he did it very intelligently and wisely. They approached him for something that was important for them. He promised them that he will let them know what the interpretation of those dreams are. But before that, he said, please listen to me as well. In other words, if you were to preach to somebody else God's word, then you must make sure that the person is attentively listening to you. There's no point in talking to people who are not listening to you. So that's another important thing that we learn from this passage. We move on, and in verses 46 and 47, we come to learn about the fact that both the interpretations that Joseph mentioned came true. According to one of the 2 inmates was to be killed as a punishment. So he was gone. But the second interpretation, it required that the person would be set free and he'll go and serve his king and will proceed with his normal routine life. To this second person, Joseph had said that once you get back to your king, do tell him there's somebody there in the prison who has been imprisoned without any reason. And there was a case of some ladies enticing a young man, which is what caused it to happen. But it so happened that the young man forgot. Once he was free and out in the free world, he did not remember what Yusuf had asked him to do. And it so happened that his king, the king of the country, that place, Egypt, he sees a dream. It's a strange dream. And he asks people close to him in his courtiers, what exactly could be the interpretation of the dream. And they said, this is a very confused dream that you are talking about. And such confused dreams have got no interpretation. We are not aware of how to interpret such dreams. It was at that time that the young man recalled that there was a pious man, God-fearing, God-conscious person called Yusuf, who is an expert in interpreting dreams. So he tells his king that if you allow me the opportunity, I will go to this pious person, and I'll come back with the interpretation of your dream, which is bothering you. So that's how it so happened that that inmate of prison of Yusuf comes back to him and asks him to interpret the dream which the king has been experiencing watching. He says, Yusuf, O man of truth, let us know about this dream. The dream was that there were 7 cows, feeble cows, which were swallowing, eating 7 healthy cows. And likewise, there was this spectacle of plants, 7 dry ones taking over and devouring 7 fresh ones. Something that was pretty odd. But when Yusuf is approached, he responded unhesitatingly and described the fact that what's going to happen is that the entire area will be caught in the grip of a very severe drought, which is going to cause famine, and people are going to be without food. But before that, there are going to be 7 years of good crops, and therefore, in these years, the crops that would emerge need to be kept carefully for the subsequent 7 years. That was the interpretation of the dream. But the details apart, the remarkable thing about this incident is that Yusuf is behind bars for no fault of his. And a man comes from the king of the entire place with a need. It was a desperate need of the king that his dream should be interpreted. And Yusuf, the man behind bars, is the man who is giving clear interpretation of the dream when nobody else could do it. And you know what? Yusuf did not ask this representative of the king to tell the king to first set him free, and then he'll let the person know about the dream. Not at all. What a great gesture. It's unimaginable. Selfless performance on the part of Jesus, or on the part of Yusuf alayhi salam. That's how great these prophets were. So he mentions whatever he knows, and the message is that if you have something to offer to the society, don't ask for anything. God will give you. Give to others what you have. Don't be greedy after their material possessions and their status. God is the greatest, and He has the possession of all treasures. So this young man goes back excited, and tells his king, his lord, that this is what the interpretation of the dream is, and the king is impressed. Oh, he's thoroughly impressed, and he says that irji ila rabbik fas'alhu. Sorry, he comes to Yusuf again. The king says to this young man, go and fetch him to me. I want to meet this man. He is amazing. And this young man comes to him and says that, my lord, my king is saying that you should be freed, and he wants to meet you. Had I been there, I would have gone immediately. Because obviously, after having been in the prison for many long years for no reason, if the king of the land is asking me to come out, why would I not go out? But you know what? Yusuf said, irji ila rabbik, go back to your lord, your king, fashalhu, and ask him, ma balun nisbatillati qattana aydiyahunna. What happened to those ladies who cut their hands, their fingers? That is, Yusuf would not come out of the prison unless it is clarified as to why was he behind bars in the first place. He would not carry this blame on himself and then go out and let people say that this man is actually blameworthy. He was convicted, and now that he has good relations with the king, he's come out. He wanted to come out without any blemish of blame on himself, and for that purpose he said, I'm going to only come out if the matter is properly addressed and resolved. So what happens is that the king gets in touch with those ladies, and that particular lady as well, who was the wife of the official who initially purchased him and decided to keep him in his home. And that lady and all other ladies, they confessed, admitted that Yusuf is an extremely pious person. There was nothing wrong with him. He didn't do anything wrong. We were the ones who were on the wrong, and we incorrectly, wrongly blamed him. And as a consequence, Yusuf, his name was clarified, was out of all the blames. But when it all happened, it must have been an occasion for Yusuf to feel elated. But he wasn't arrogant. He was extremely humble. What he said was, فَمَا أُبَرِّئُ نَفْسِي, I'm not absolving myself. إِنَّ النَّفْسَ لَأَمَّارَةٌ بِسُوءٍ. Indeed, human soul inclines towards evil, except when my Lord has mercy on it. Indeed, my Lord is forgiving and merciful. So the lesson to be learnt is that we should always be humble. God, if He enables us to at times be in a position where we are declared as better than others, and others, their faults are exposed, we still should not be proud and arrogant. We should feel humble. Then what happens is that Yusuf talks to this king, and he gets the key position in the society, in that administrative, that area, and he gets the job to arrange for the food to be preserved and to be distributed to all people who would need the food in the next 7 difficult years of drought and famine, as the interpretation of the dream would say. So the people of all over the place would come to Yusuf from different areas to get the food stuff for their purposes, for the needs of their families for a particular year. And when all people were coming to him and his system, they included his brothers. Now, those brothers, they came to him once, and then a second time, and then a third time. Yusuf, by the way, recognized them immediately, but they could not recognize him. And the third time when they came to him, they said, O Aziz, adversity has touched us and our family. So give us full measure. فَأَوْفِي لَنَا الْكَيْلِ. We have not come with the proper price with us. We've gone poor. وَتَصَدَّقْ عَلَيْنَا. And please give us some more. إِنَّ اللَّهَ يَجْزِي الْمُتَصَدِّقِينَ. Give us more in charity. Indeed, God rewards those who are charitable. To me, it is the climax of the story. Those very brothers who had thrown the young, weak, vulnerable Yusuf into a well, deep into it, they are now begging to Yusuf to give them food, to give charity to them, because they can't afford it. That's what God does. God is great. He turns the tables whenever He wants to. So if you are in a position of strength at some stage in your life over others, don't be arrogant. Don't think that it's going to last forever. You are not in control of everything. It's God who controls everything. So when it becomes clear that those were the brothers of Yusuf and the one who was in charge of the affairs was now their younger brother Yusuf, whom they had tried to dispose of and get rid of, they felt very embarrassed and they sought his forgiveness. And they said, قَالُوا تَاللَّهِ لَقَدْ آثَرَكَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْنَا. Yusuf, you know what? God has preferred you over us. You have been much better than us. وَإِن كُنَّا لَخَاطِئِينَ. And indeed, we were the ones who were at fault. And you know what Yusuf says? قَالَ لَا تَثْرِيبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الْيَوْمِ. He said, there is no blame on you now. يَغْفِرُ اللَّهُ لَكُمْ. May God forgive you. وَهُوَ أَرْحَمُ الرَّاحِمِينَ. And He is the most merciful amongst those who are merciful. And this is exactly what Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam also said to the people of Mecca when he went there at the time of the conquest of Mecca. And the people, the polities who were the ones who were responsible to force him to go out of Mecca, they came to him and he said the same thing to them. I say the same thing to you which Yusuf said to his brothers, La tathriba alaykum al-yawm. There is no blame on you now. You're set free. Then we have verse 100 which says, وَرَفَعَ أَبَوَيْهِ عَلَى الْعَرْشِ وَخَرُّوا لَهُ سُجَّدًا. And he raised his parents upon the throne and they bowed before him. So they went down in respect, and when it happened, this is what Yusuf said. Oh father, this is the interpretation of my dream. God has made it a reality. And He was good to me when He took me out of prison and brought you here from the rural areas after Satan caused conflict between me and my brothers. So he just completely set aside the blame of the brothers and said it was basically the doing of Satan. Indeed, God does whatever He wants in subtle ways. Indeed, He is knowing and wise, and that's very true. Things happen in this life and we think as if we are doing what we are doing. Indeed, we are doing what we are doing to a certain extent. But then God arranges for things to happen in a way they are manipulated to be what God plans them to be in a certain way, in a subtle way. We don't even realize it, but most people don't know. We move on to the second surah which partners with Surah Yusuf, which is Surah Ra'd. It's surah number 13. It begins by saying Alif Lam Mim Ra. It's an addition of the letter Ra in it. Otherwise, it's the same disjointed letters that begin the surah. It says, these are the verses of the book of God, and whatever is being revealed to you is truth, even though most of these people don't believe. They don't want to believe. So, the book is from God. The way it has been expressed itself is a clear indication that it's from God. But most people don't want to understand. Verse 17 of Surah Ra'd says, He sends down rain from the sky and water flows with rising foam. This foam is also formed when to make jewelry, ore is heated. But what happens is that the foam soon disappears, and what is useful, that is water, it stays. Thus, God presents examples of truth and falsehood. So, by giving the example of natural phenomena, two different phenomenon, he is telling us that at times it so happens that there is water flowing, but on top of it there is a lot of foam, which seems very prominent, dominant, but the foam disappears very soon. And what is useful, that is water, it stays. Likewise, the Almighty is mentioning is the case with the truth and untruth. He is comforting the companions that you are on the right path. These enemies of God, enemies of His message, they are on the wrong path. At the moment they are dominating, like foam dominates for a certain while. But this dominance is short-lived. It's going to be over very soon. That's what we observe in the natural phenomena, and that's what you are going to observe in your own experience with these enemies. So don't be influenced and impressed by their dominance at the moment. They may be large in number, they may be stronger in their military might, they may have a very strong, effective influence over the society because of their context, but this is going to disappear very soon. And you who are important, useful, you are going to stay as the water stays, and they would disappear like foam disappears. Then we move on to verses 20 to 24, when the Almighty is telling us that the people of understanding acknowledge the truth of God's message. Not everybody understands His message. It's only the people who have true knowledge that who want to learn from the Almighty's messages, who get the privilege of acknowledging the truth and following it. Who are these people? Those who fulfill their promises. Whenever they make a promise, they make sure that they fulfill it. They maintain good relations with their relatives. They know that the relatives have been given to them by God. Friendship is what is up to the individual. It's optional. But what is binding is the relationship that the Almighty has given by virtue of us belonging to a family. So these good people are the ones who maintain good relations with relatives, fear the accountability. They know that the consequences of evil deeds are going to be evil. They remain steadfast in the good things that they are doing for the right cause. They say their prayers regularly. They spend their wealth, a part of their wealth, in the way of God for the betterment of the poor. They spend openly as well as hiding it, concealing it. And if somebody does wrong to them, they repel the wrong, evil with a good response. So, they want goodness, virtue to prevail, peace to prevail. They will enter the paradise, the Almighty says, because they were steadfast and patient. And the great news that the Almighty has given in this passage is that they'll enter the paradise with their families, their parents, their spouses, their children. Those of them who performed well, like these people performed well. If that's what the case is going to be, then the Almighty is going to allow such people to have a good family life in the next life in a way that they will all live happily forever. Each person is going to get the due share in what he or she did in the worldly life. But then eventually, if they are all successful for entering the paradise, they will be allowed the facility, the good possibility of living together as a family as they did in the worldly life. May the Almighty enable us to understand His message as best as is possible, and may He enable us to put this message across to others also who have not as yet understood or received it properly, and may He enable us to practice it to the best of our abilities.